Imagine you're constantly kind of editing yourself.
Hmm.
Like there's this little voice judging every thought, every impulse.
Hmm.
Too loud maybe, or too opinionated, or just not nice enough. Did that ring a bell?
Oh, absolutely. That internal editor working overtime.
Yeah. And what if that, constant pressure to be good
Yeah.
is actually costing you something? Something really important, like your own voice, maybe your power. Let's explore that.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how many of us walk around with these internal rules running, and we often don't even know where they came from.
Exactly. And that's really what we're getting into today, those deep societal expectations, particularly the ones often placed on women.
Right.
Our sources explore this idea of good girl conditioning and, the beliefs that really keep it going.
It's about understanding the patterns, not really pointing fingers.
Exactly. Understanding them and, crucially, thinking about how we might start moving beyond them. So, welcome. We're glad you're here for the conversation.
And understanding these patterns, it really means looking bigger than just individual choices, right? It's about the culture that shapes how we see good or acceptable.
Okay, so let's nail down this good girl idea more.
Mm,
The sources, they paint a really clear picture, don't they?
they do.
Like, think back. Maybe it's that image of a neat school uniform or, I don't know, piano lessons that maybe your parents really pushed for.
Or ballet, yeah. Excelling in the spelling bee.
Totally. Always getting the homework done perfectly, being seen as sweet, maybe a bit naive, kind of docile. It's a strangely familiar image.
It really is. And it points to how society rewards certain things, right?
Yeah.
Niceness, following the rules, working hard within the lines. You get praised for that.
Especially girls and women, yeah. That positive feedback starts so young, it really cements those ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
The author we're looking at, she even shares her own experience as a really driven daughter of immigrants, being that high achiever.
Yeah, that was her way to fit in, wasn't it?
Exactly. To kind of assimilate, deal with feeling like an outsider, maybe quiet, that sense of loss, or not quite belonging.
And that personal story just shows how these traits, which seem positive on the surface, can also be, coping strategies, ways to find safety or acceptance.
Welcome to the Audiobook Quiver YouTube channel. If you're finding this exploration of our sources interesting, maybe take just a second to like this video.
Yeah.
And follow the channel, hit that notification bell too, so you don't miss out on more reviews and summaries like this one.
Okay, so we've talked about the personal level, but let's zoom out, the wider context.
Right, what our sources call the patriarchy. And they frame it really broadly, which I think is helpful. It's not just about male dominance.
No, it's how that intersects with other systems, things like white supremacy, capitalism. They sort of prop each other up.
That intersectional angle is so key, isn't it? They don't work in isolation. They weave together, creating this complex set of expectations.
Yeah, like think about how capitalism might benefit from traditional gender roles at work, for instance.
That's a really good question. And the reach of this dominant culture, it's almost invisible because it's just everywhere.
It really is.
The sources give such mundane examples, but they're powerful, like how kitchen cupboards are often set up, how shampoo is marketed, the pink and blue for babies.
Movies, songs.
Tech products, store layouts. It shapes our whole world without us even noticing half the time.
It's the water we swim in, like they say. And because it's everywhere, we just absorb the messages, the assumptions, the norms.
And it's so crucial to remember, the sources really stress this, this isn't just about limiting women. These rigid ideas hurt everyone.
Absolutely.
Men get pushed into these narrow boxes too, right? Strong, silent, provider. And think about kids, forced into these gender binaries, practically from birth. It limits them just being kids.
Definitely. Everyone loses out when we have these inflexible roles. We miss the full spectrum of just human experience.
The sources also have this really interesting concept, messengers of the patriarchy. And what's key is, these aren't necessarily bad people acting maliciously. They can be anyone, any gender, any age. They're just the carriers.
Yeah.
Often without even realizing it.
Spreading those cultural norms, yeah. Like maybe celebrities or even just family members repeating things they heard.
Exactly. It helps shift the focus, doesn't it? It's the system, not necessarily the individual messenger. That's the core issue.
Right. It allows for a bit more understanding. We're all kind of swimming in it, and we all carry some of those messages.
Okay, so this brings us right to the heart of it. What the sources call the 5 good girl myths.
Mm-hmm.
These core beliefs.
Yeah, the beliefs that grow out of that conditioning, and they can really sabotage us. They push women towards being obedient, maybe playing small, always putting others first.
And that limits your own power, your potential. They become these unconscious rules guiding how you're supposed to act.
They get deep in there, don't they? Influencing choices without you even being fully aware sometimes.
Definitely.
So let's name them. We've got rules, perfection, logic, harmony, and sacrifice. Just hearing the list, you can almost feel the constraints, can't you?
Yeah. Each one is like a different side of how society steers women away from maybe their more authentic selves towards getting that external nod of approval.
Mm-hmm. Seeking validation.
And the sources suggest that while we might feel pulls from all of them, often there's one that runs a bit deeper for each person.
But it's not fixed, right? That's important.
Right. It can change, depending on where you are in life, what you're doing. They give that example of a friend.
Oh, yeah. Logic was big for her in school, then rules kicked in with her career, and after kids, sacrifice became the main one.
It shows how fluid they are. They're not personality traits locked in stone.
No, they're learned patterns, and that means they can be unlearned or at least understood and changed. Identifying which one is loudest for you in a situation, that's the starting point.
Okay, let's dig into the first one, the myth of rules.
Okay.
This is that deep belief that there's a right way and a wrong way for everything. And this strong tendency to stick to the rules laid out by others.
And they make a distinction, don't they, between the visible rules, like laws.
Right. Laws, school policies, that kind of thing. And then the invisible rules. The cultural norms, what society just expects.
And those invisible ones, wow, they can be powerful. The unspoken stuff.
Totally. That's where it gets tricky. Because they become dangerous when they clash with what you actually value.
Or when they're enforced with shame or fear.
Yeah, or they're just old rules you picked up as a kid that don't even fit anymore. Think about messages from family, media, religion even, especially around, say, women's behavior or sexuality.
Those internalized rules can create so much inner conflict. You end up doing things that don't feel right, just trying to meet these unspoken expectations.
It's interesting, too, how schools often reward the rule followers. Girls often do well academically.
Which raises that question, yeah. Is it always deep learning or sometimes just being good at following the expected script?
It shows how the system itself can kind of reinforce this myth of rules, rewarding conformity.
Potentially discouraging thinking outside the box, especially if you've been socialized to prioritize being obedient.
Which makes it so important to really question these invisible rules,
Yeah.
even the ones that seem nice on the surface.
Because are they based on your values? Or just something external you absorbed?
Exactly. Sticking to them rigidly can lead to that feeling of never being quite good enough and always being afraid of messing up.
Questioning them gives you back some power. You get to be intentional, follow your own compass, not just the map someone else drew.
So what's a better way to approach this? The sources offer a really freeing idea, a reframe for this myth.
Yeah.
All paths are fine, so I'll keep on walking.
Ooh, I like that.
It's about letting go of that rigid, one right way idea, giving yourself permission to just explore without overthinking every single step into paralysis.
It brings in flexibility, doesn't it? A sense of exploration. Life isn't a straight line.
Reminds me of that design thinking thing. Don't be precious about your ideas.
Yeah.
Be willing to try stuff, iterate.
Yes. That mindset stops you getting so hung up on one perfect outcome that you're scared to even start.
It also links to this idea that we're not just one thing. We develop all these different parts of ourselves.
Like having 30 selves by age 30, that concept they mentioned.
Yeah. Our identity is layered. It changes, it adapts, which is so different from that pressure to find your one true passion.
Recognizing you're multifaceted takes the pressure off. You can have lots of interests, you can evolve. It's much more freeing.
Then there's this idea of tapping into the wisdom of joy. Because the myth of rules, and perfection too, which we'll get to, they can really squash the things that just naturally make you happy.
And joy is important. It tells you what genuinely motivates you from the inside, not what you think you should be doing.
Our sources say, pause and ask. What really brings you joy? Maybe even think back to childhood, before all the rules piled on. They mention that Sanskrit word, ananda, bliss.
Connecting with joy is like a powerful antidote to feeling constrained.
It leads into flow, right? That state where you're totally absorbed, challenged just enough.
Yeah, time just disappears. Even work can feel meaningful then.
So maybe reflect. What are your top 3 activities where you really get lost like that? That could be a clue to work that genuinely fits you.
Flow experiences are just inherently satisfying. They show you're using your strengths in a balanced way, purposeful engagement.
And instead of feeling like you have to pick just one path, the sources suggest brainstorming through blending.
Ah, combining things.
Yeah, Actively looking for connections between your different interests, asking, how could I use X and Y? They shared that example of someone blending chocolate making, design, and cooking.
That opens up cool possibilities, doesn't it? Things you wouldn't think of if you kept everything in separate boxes.
So for you listening, maybe try it. Pick two things you're drawn to, even if they seem totally unrelated. Ask, how could I apply X to Y? Then flip it. How could Y apply to X?
It's a neat way to loosen the grip of feeling like you have to choose just one thing.
Okay, let's shift to the second myth, the myth of perfection.
Ah, the big one for many people. That constant chase for flawlessness, terrified of mistakes.
Yeah, it's often driven by needing approval, fearing judgment. And it sets this impossible standard so you feel inadequate, maybe even frozen.
Right. You get paralyzed.
The sources talk about how even praise like, you're so smart,
Yeah.
can backfire, especially for girls.
Because it creates a fixed mindset, right? If you're just smart, then failing feels like proof you're not. So you avoid challenges.
Exactly. Whereas praising the effort, the process that encourages a growth mindset, you see abilities as something you can develop.
So you're more willing to try hard things, learn from mistakes instead of protecting that smart label.
The author shares that story about drawing as a kid, getting constructive criticism that just shut her down.
Yeah, it planted that seed.
Yeah.
Either you have talent or you don't, and that can stop you exploring for years.
Perfectionism just kills creativity, doesn't it? Stops you starting because you're scared it won't be perfect right out of the gate.
Like Jade, the VP, who wouldn't give a speech because she didn't feel ready, even though she clearly was.
Classic perfectionism, missing opportunities because of that fear.
So what's the antidote they suggest?
Prototyping.
Ah, yes. Small experiments.
Exactly. Break down the huge goal into tiny, scrappy versions. Low stakes. The point is just to learn and tweak, not nail it first try.
Like Jade's podcast idea, starting as just a quick voice memo.
Yeah. It embraces imperfection. Little steps, get feedback, refine. No pressure for a perfect final thing right away.
The key is making the prototype super easy, right? Remove the barriers.
Totally. Shrink the idea down. Grand art show becomes one painting. Big freelance business becomes one client first.
Makes taking that first step way less scary.
And then the vulnerable bit, sharing those early versions.
Oh, yeah. Putting it out there before it feels done.
But that's where the real learning happens. They talk about finding your vulnerability edge, that spot just outside your comfort zone where growth happens.
Pushing yourself just a little. It's uncomfortable, but that's where the insights are.
The reframe for perfectionism is doing to being. Unhooking your self-worth from what you achieve. There's that mantra, my worthiness is inherent and not dependent on my achievements.
That's powerful. Shifting from external validation to just internal acceptance. Your value is just there. It's not earned by doing things perfectly.
And to help with that shift, they suggest maybe a short meditation practice, just 5 or 10 minutes focusing on your breath.
Like an act of non-doing.
Yeah. Quiets the inner critic, creates space between you and your performance.
Just being present without needing to achieve anything in that moment. Build self-acceptance.
Setting work boundaries is another big one, to fight that never doing enough feeling.
Like Zoe working crazy hours.
Right, and her trying that let's see what you can get away with approach to boundaries actually worked. She got her life back.
Protecting your time and energy is crucial, prevents burnout. You have to experiment to find what works for you.
There are practical tools too, like eliminate, delegate, automate for tasks.
Good framework. And sequencing interests instead of trying to do it all now.
Yeah, and the idea folder so you don't jump on every single new thought immediately.
Strategies to feel less overwhelmed, more intentional.
They also gently point out that needing control, that perfectionism, can sometimes come from feeling insecure, like you don't belong.
So self-compassion is key.
Definitely. And for saying no, the Sandwich feedback method, positive, the no or the issue, then another
A
positive.
gentler way to set a boundary, yeah. And they recommend a self-compassion meditation too.
And that little story about the old man and unhappiness, just broadening the perspective beyond your own stuff sometimes.
Good reminder. Okay, third myth.
The myth of logic. This is prioritizing rational thought above everything else in decisions, wanting to seem smart, credible.
Right. Valuing logic so much that you dismiss other ways of knowing.
And what gets pushed aside? Intuition, imagination, empathy.
Big losses.
They share that incredible story about the author's mom getting electrocuted.
And the grandmother just knew to turn off the power. Pure intuition.
Shows the limits of just logic, right?
Yeah.
Intuition works differently.
And the sources talk about how society can make women disconnect from their bodies, their intuition.
Yeah, living in a world that often objectifies or controls women's bodies can create this protective split, head versus body, even without specific trauma.
You learn to distrust those bodily signals, maybe, as self-preservation.
And patriarchy often dismisses emotions as weakness, right? Calling women crazy or hysterical if they express feelings.
Which just silences people and reinforces that false idea that logic is superior to feeling.
But the sources argue strongly. Feeling all your emotions, even the tough ones, is essential for self-understanding, for designing a life you actually enjoy.
Like Ina's avoiding her marriage problems, suppressing feelings doesn't work long term.
No, they just pop up somewhere else. You got to feel them to process them.
So what's a technique for that?
Mindful observation of bodily sensations. Just pausing, closing your eyes maybe, and
Hmm.
noticing what's happening in your belly, your chest, your throat.
Connecting back to the body's language, listening to physical sensations.
They also mention honoring the menstrual cycle, challenging the shame around it, and how this body awareness can unlock inner wisdom for big decisions.
Like Vansha with the job offer, using the body's yes versus no. Feeling what yes felt like physically versus no.
Our bodies hold so much information our logical minds miss. Tuning in can guide us better.
Even awe, that feeling of wonder. It's the body talking, but it can feel like fear sometimes, physically.
Yeah, the gasp, goosebumps. Learning to tell the difference helps you follow intuition, not just fear.
So you can step out of your comfort zone when it's awe, not just panic.
And to reclaim imagination, use that right brain more. They suggest finding your inner artist.
Ah, giving that creative, intuitive part a name, like the authors, Leela.
Yeah, they guide you. Describe your inner artist, what inspires them, visualize them, give them an empowering name.
And then the counterpoint, the inner skeptic.
Right. The logical critic that shuts the artist down. Name that one too, but maybe something disarming, kind of funny, to take away its power.
Naming them helps you see those different voices inside, and maybe quiet the skeptic so the artist can play.
Okay.
Myth number 4.
The myth of harmony. This is the drive to be easygoing, pleasant, liked. Keeping the peace is the main goal for approval.
And what do you give up?
Your voice, your truth.
Ouch.
The author's story about the regrettable tattoo with the ex, just to avoid conflict in the moment, that really shows the cost.
Prioritizing harmony over your own gut feeling leads to choices you regret. Suppressing your voice has consequences.
The root is often fear of conflict, right?
Right.
So you avoid disagreement, anger, disappointment.
But that stops real growth, authentic connection. They mention research on teenage girls losing their voices to protect relationships.
So damaging. And it's often learned in families, maybe being the peacemaker kid.
The antidote they suggest is social courage.
Yeah, using your voice, setting boundaries, leaning into the difficult conversations, not away from them.
Willing to risk discomfort to be true to yourself. Essential for well-being in real relationships.
That runaway bride example, not knowing how she liked her eggs, it shows how you can lose touch with your own self.
And it shows up in romance as codependency too, right? Organizing your life around someone else, losing yourself.
Totally. And avoiding tough talks about sex, money,
Yeah.
even with partners.
And it happens at work too. Even really strong women holding back their voice sometimes.
Yeah, avoiding direct feedback, jumping to conclusions instead of just asking.
So what are the tools for this one?
3 feedback tools. The magical debrief, I wish, what if, for reflecting without blame.
Okay.
Nonviolent communication,
Hmm.
NBC, focusing on facts, feelings, needs, requests. Respectfully expressing yourself.
And the request needs to be a real request, not a demand. You have to be okay with hearing no.
Exactly. And third, just directly stating your boundaries, especially if you feel unsafe, like the barbecue example with the brother-in-law's gun, just saying, I'm not comfortable with that here.
Clear and direct. Then there's the Bluebeard effect.
Right, recognizing those toxic relationships where your energy just gets sucked away constantly.
And Bluebeard can be anyone, not just a romantic partner. Someone who consistently drains you. Recognizing that pattern is step 1.
And that feeling, when you know you should leave but you don't. Cognitive dissonance.
They recommend a choice meditation for reclaiming your agency there.
Ultimately, you have to use your voice to get out, even if it's terrifying.
And be ready for backlash sometimes. People might not like it when you set boundaries.
But remembering, you're not responsible for their feelings or their problems. You're responsible for you. Okay, last one.
Myth number 5. Sacrifice.
Putting everyone else's needs first, all the time at the expense of your own well-being. The strategy is being selfless, helpful, saving the day.
Deeply ingrained, especially for women as caregivers, culturally
And
reinforced.
what do you lose? Time and energy, which equals your contribution, your destiny, really.
Wow, yeah. Time and energy are finite.
The story about the author's mom, her independent spirit early on, then the sacrifices as an immigrant, giving up her career, but also her fight to keep some sense of self through work.
It shows the complexity. Sacrifice isn't always bad, but when it's unconscious or imposed, that leads to resentment, burnout.
This myth is contagious, reinforced by things like unequal pay. It pushes that helper mode until you're overextended and don't even realize it.
And that unconscious sacrifice, like the author's mom looking back, breeds bitterness eventually.
Common signs. Saying yes automatically, always prioritizing others, feeling responsible for everyone's problems, being available 24/7.
They talk about reactive versus responsive time use.
Yeah. Reactive is just constantly putting out fires, responding to others. Responsive is planning your time, blocking out space for self-care, your own goals.
Being proactive with your time and energy is key to breaking this myth, investing in what nourishes you.
Designing self-care rituals helps. And shaping your environment to support them, like that sandwich ritual structure idea.
And emotional boundaries, not soaking up everyone else's negativity.
Mindfulness helps here, bringing attention back to yourself. And that mantra, feel but don't fix.
Yes, empathize, but don't feel you have to solve it all for them.
Also, learning to filter feedback. Owning your own feelings without sacrificing them to please others.
And distinguishing true service, giving from an authentic place from just helping out of obligation or guilt.
Like Bala picking up rocks in India. A conscious choice to contribute.
Overcoming sacrifice lets women use their genius, shape the future. It's about valuing your own needs so you can contribute sustainably.
And remembering the journey isn't straight. Setbacks happen. That's normal.
Accepting all parts of yourself, even the ugly bits, unlocks your gifts. Like Cassidy and her biracial identity struggle, her intersections gave her unique insights.
Knowing and accepting your story is foundational. And recognizing it's a collective journey connected to ancestors, those who came before.
The core message is powerful. The world needs your gifts. Your unique contribution matters.
It really does. It's about realizing that prioritizing yourself isn't selfish. It's actually necessary to give your best to the world.
Exactly. You fill your own cup so you have something to offer.
So as you've been listening, maybe think, which of these myths, these 5 myths, really hit home for you? Which ones feel familiar?
Yeah, where do you see them showing up in your thoughts, your choices, how you act day to day?
Maybe consider exploring some of the tools we talked about, those reframes, just as a starting point to gently loosen their grip.
Just becoming aware of the patterns is huge. That's really the first, most important step toward making a change.
Absolutely. Gaining that insight, that knowledge, that's the foundation for shifting things in your own life.
So here's something to maybe mull over this week. What's one small thing, one concrete action you could take to start dismantling just one aspect of your own good girl myth?
We really hope this exploration gave you some food for thought. For more engaging reviews and book summaries, please do like this video, follow the Audiobook Quiver channel, and hit that notification bell. We look forward to exploring more sources with you soon.